Leave your homeland and your father's house, and go to the land that I will show you." A voice echoed within the silence of my heart, though it was not audible to the ears. It was clearer and more powerful than the roar of any storm. "I will make of you a great nation. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and through you all the peoples of the earth will be blessed." These words of the Lord resonated deeply within me, marking the beginning of my journey. I am Abraham, born as Abram, inner of the Chaldees, a prosperous city in Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers nourished the land. My father, Terah, was a respected man, but our lives were simple, bound by the seasons and the rituals of a polytheistic society. The divine call was both an awakening and a rupture. "I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing." How could someone like me, just a mortal among so many chosen for such a destiny? The promise was overwhelming, as vast as the night sky under which I stood. It is here, at the age of 75, that my incredible story begins. With a heart full of hope and budding faith, I obeyed the Lord and set out with my wife Sarai, my nephew Lot, and all our possessions. We journeyed toward the land of Canaan. It was a journey filled with hope, guided by the divine promise. We traveled northwest through Haran and eventually arrived in Canaan, a land of rolling hills and fertile valleys, inhabited by Canaanite peoples and fortified city-states, each ruled by its own king. Life in Canaan was different from her. Here, fields and vineyards stretched as far as the eye could see, and the scent of olive and fig trees filled the air. Yet the land was already occupied by other peoples and cultures. I traveled through the country to the holy place of Shechem, under the oak of Moreh. At that time, the Canaanites owned those lands, but it was there that the Lord appeared to me again, promising, "To your descendants, I will give this land." In honor of his promise, I erected an altar there. I then moved toward the hill country east of Bethel, between Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, where I set up camp. Again, I erected an altar to the Lord and called upon his name, marking every place of my journey with an act of faith and devotion. But the test of our faith came swiftly. The promised land, which had welcomed my steps under the divine blessing, soon became inhospitable due to a severe famine. "Why have you brought us to this place?" I wondered, looking skyward for answers. With regret, I decided to leave for Egypt, the land of the Nile and its abundant granaries. It was a decision that tested the Almighty's promise to care for my family. Yet, the promise echoed in my heart, "Fear not, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward will be very great." Still, aware of Sarai's beauty and fearing for my life, I devised a plan. I asked her to pose as my sister, believing that I would be treated well for her sake and that my life would be spared. Upon arriving in Egypt, Sarai's beauty captivated everyone, including the officers of Pharaoh's court. She was taken to Pharaoh's palace, and I was treated well because of her. I acquired sheep, cattle, donkeys, maidservants, and camels. My stay in Egypt was marked by the stark contrast between the opulence of the palaces and the slavery of many of its inhabitants. Yet, the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his household with great plagues because of Sarai. Pharaoh, realizing the truth, confronted me. "What have you done to me? Why did you not tell me she was your wife?" He asked, "Take her and go," he commanded, and we were escorted out of Egypt. We returned to Canaan not only with more than we had brought, but also with a deeper understanding of the nature of our God protector, a provider, and an unfailing guide in times of uncertainty. From Egypt, we ascended to the Negev, and I returned to Bethel, the place of our first encampment. Our possessions had grown so much that there was no longer enough space for us and our flocks, leading to conflicts between my shepherds and Lot's. To avoid disputes and maintain peace, I proposed a solution. Let there be no strife between us, for we are family. The whole earth is before you. If you go left, I will go right. If you go right, I will go left. Lot chose the fertile Jordan Valley, moving eastward, while I remained in Canaan. After we parted ways, the Lord spoke to me again. Lift up your eyes and look from where you are read of the north, south, east, and west. All the land you see, I will give to you and your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as numerous as the dust of the earth. Following the Lord's command, I traveled the land, mindful of his promise. Finally, I settled near the oak grove of Mamre in Hebron, where I erected another altar to the Lord. One day, while sitting at the entrance to my tent during the heat of the day, I looked up and saw 3 men standing near me. I ran to them and bowed, offering them water to wash their feet and food to restore their strength. They accepted, and as we ate together, they asked about Sarai. One of them, with a divine promise, said, I will certainly return to you next year, and by that time, Sarah will have a son. Sarai, overhearing, laughed inwardly, doubting the possibility of motherhood at her age. Our Lord, aware of her laughter, asked, Why did Sarah laugh? Saying, Son, I really have a child now that I am old. Is anything too hard for the Lord? When Sarah denied laughing, the Lord replied, Yes, you did laugh. After the men left for Sodom, the Lord shared his plans with me. I pleaded for the city, asking, Will you destroy the righteous with the wicked? If there are 50 righteous people, will you spare the city? The Lord promised that he would spare it for the sake of 50 righteous. My intercession continued, and he agreed to spare it for the sake of 10 righteous people. When the 2 angels arrived in Sodom, Lot greeted them and invited them to stay at his house. However, the men of Sodom surrounded the house, demanding that Lot hand over the guests. Lot offered his daughters to the crowd, but the angels intervened, blinding the attackers. The angels revealed their mission to destroy Sodom because of its wickedness. They urged Lot to flee with his family, and despite his hesitation, they led him out of the city. Once safe, the angels warned Lot not to look back, but Lot's wife disobeyed and turned to look, becoming a pillar of salt. As I watched from a distance, I saw the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, a grim reminder of the consequences of sin. Yet, the Lord remembered his promise to me and saved Lot. From there, I moved to the Negev and eventually to Gerar, where I once again feared for my life because of Sarah's beauty. I called her my sister, and King Abimelech took her into his palace. But God intervened, appearing to Abimelech in a dream, warning him not to touch Sarah. Abimelech, fearing the Lord, returned Sarah to me and compensated us with sheep, cattle, and land. God's faithfulness continued to manifest in our lives. Sarah conceived and bore me a son in my old age. Just as it had promised, I named him Isaac, and at 8 days old, I circumcised him. following God's instructions. At 100 years old, I marveled at God's power and faithfulness. Though our joy was immense, not all was peaceful in our family. Sarah asked me to send Hagar and Ishmael away because she feared Ishmael would share in Isaac's inheritance. I was grieved, but God assured me that he would make a nation from Ishmael as well. I sent them away, trusting in God's promise. Ishmael grew up in the desert, becoming an archer, and his mother married him to an Egyptian woman. Meanwhile, Abimelech and his chief, Phicol, sought a treaty with me, recognizing God's blessing on my life. We made peace, but tensions arose over a well that Abimelech's servants had seized. Despite this, we reached an agreement, sealing it with an oath at Beersheba. Then, one day, God tested me. He called, "Abraham," and I responded, "Here I am." He instructed me to take my son Isaac, the son I loved, to the region of Moriah and offer him as a sacrifice.